Have you ever felt that your life doesn't change through big decisions, but through very small, very quiet things, the things you keep endure and stay familiar with, to the point that you don't even realize they are draining your energy day by day? In Carl Jung's psychology, the most powerful changes do not come from what you add to your life, but from what you silently remove, because it no longer belongs to you. The paradox is, people often think they are stuck because they lack something, a lack of opportunity, a lack of motivation, a lack of luck. But Jung would look at you and say, it's not that you lack, it's that you are carrying too much. Too much past, too much judgment, too much noise, too many roles that no longer fit. And those are the invisible chains that keep you from stepping into a more mature version of yourself. In today's video, we will explore the 10 things you must remove in silence if you want to change your life in the spirit of Carl Jung. This is a journey of liberation. Each removal is a return, a release of the past, an opening for the future. And when you let go of what no longer belongs to you, you will see your life open up more lightly, more deeply, in ways you never expected. Are you ready to begin this journey? Number 1. Removing the past version that is steering your life from the unconscious. There are moments in life when you feel as though you are walking on a path so familiar it becomes frightening. You change jobs, change environments, change partners, change plans, but everything still loops back to the same emotional pattern: disappointment, repetition, exhaustion. You ask yourself, why am I still stuck, even though I've changed so much? Carl Jung has a quote that may startle you. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. What you try to forget, avoid, or bury in silence are exactly the things steering your life, because there is a version of you, the one carrying wounds, memories, shame, that still lives inside the unconscious. It doesn't yell, it doesn't knock, but it directs your choices every day. You think you are choosing freedom, but in truth, you are choosing based on old patterns. You think you are living in the present, but you are reenacting the past. Imagine you are driving a car, but someone in the back seat is whispering directions. You don't see them, but you follow them. That is your past version. The child who felt abandoned, the young adult who was betrayed, the person who was never loved properly. When you don't look at them, they continue to hold the map, and you keep returning to the same familiar loop without knowing why. I once knew the story of a woman who, for more than 6 years, always chose relationships in which she had to prove she was worthy. She thought it was destiny or a coincidence, but in therapy she realized, when she was little, whenever she cried, her mother would say, "Don't bother others." And the unconscious recorded a message: to be loved, you must be good and never inconvenience anyone. And many years later, she still loved like a child trying to be chosen. Not because she was weak, but because that past version had never been seen, never been held. She didn't need to change men, she needed to free the child inside. In Jungian psychology, buried memories are called complexes, knots of energy that have not been untangled. They function like software code running in the background of your mind, automating decisions, reactions, and emotions that you mistake for personality. But they are not personality, they are programming. And the sad but beautiful truth is, they do not disappear because you try to forget them. They dissolve only when you dare to look at them with new light. Removing the past version in silence is not escaping, it is stopping the past from deciding your future. Because the moment you turn back and face the old wound, something strange happens. It no longer looks as frightening as before. You begin to realize you are no longer the child you were, no longer as fragile as you were when the wound was created, and the moment that awareness appears, the unconscious loop begins to crack open. Inside, you hear a small but unmistakably clear voice. I've grown up. From now on, I will drive my life. And from that moment, you step into a new chapter, not of avoidance, but of liberation. When you finally see the past version silently steering you, the next lesson appears like another door you must open. The ability to live without needing anyone to understand you correctly. 2. Removing the need to be correctly understood by others. Some people spend their whole lives explaining, clarifying, trying to make others see them accurately. But the more they try, the more distorted they become in the eyes of others. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And the paradox is, you can only become yourself when you stop chasing the need to be understood correctly. Because when you live to be understood, you are living through their eyes, not through your soul. I once met a young woman in a counseling session. She told me that for many years, the thing that exhausted her the most wasn't work nor pressure, but the feeling of, no one truly understands me. She said that whenever she stayed quiet to process her emotions, her boyfriend called her cold. Whenever she expressed her opinion, co-workers said she was too sensitive. Whenever she lived sincerely, others said she was strange. One day, she broke down, not from conflict, but from the crushing effort to stand between two worlds, the inner world full of depth and the outer world insisting she be simpler. In therapy, she realized the problem was not that she was hard to understand, but that she tried so hard to make others understand her in the way she wanted. The truth is, no one can see you fully, because they do not live inside you. And when she accepted that, a strange sense of relief washed over her. She stopped explaining, stopped proving, stopped shrinking herself to be easier to understand. And in that moment, her life became more comfortable than ever. This reminded me of the film A Beautiful Mind, the story of John Nash, a mathematical genius who lived between two realities, one created in his mind and the one the world expected him to conform to. There is a beautiful scene where his wife says she doesn't need to understand everything he sees, but she knows who he is, and that is enough. That moment freed Nash from the need to be understood correctly, because sometimes understanding does not come from logic, but from unconditional acceptance. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to be understood, you begin to be seen more clearly, not through eyes, but through presence. When you remove the need to be understood, you return to a rare kind of freedom. Freedom from the gaze. You do not live waiting for someone to interpret you correctly. You live because you know who you are. That is when inner authority returns to your hands. You no longer sway under misunderstandings, no longer tremble at misjudgments, no longer lose direction when someone sees you through their own lens. And perhaps the biggest lesson is this: you don't need to be understood in order to live authentically. You only need enough courage to stand with yourself, even when no one else does. Because the moment you stop waiting for others to see you, you begin living lighter, truer, and freer. Clarity comes from within, not from the gaze outside. And if you've ever felt that no one truly sees you, leave a comment below. No details needed, just one sentence, one moment, or one small experience. Who knows, your story may reach someone who feels lost the same way you once did. 3. Removing the things whose energy has expired but you still cling to. And from the lesson about the need to be understood, you step into another depth of the journey, facing the things in your life whose energy has already expired, but you still cling to. This is not a weakness, but the natural reflex of the mind, because the old, even when painful, still gives us a sense of familiarity. But as Jung once said, we don't get wounded alone, and we don't heal alone. Only the unconscious knows when a chapter has truly ended, even when the conscious mind still tries to hold that page in place. There are things we hold on to not because we still love them or still want them, but simply because we fear the emptiness that follows after letting go. A relationship that has no more life, a job you have outgrown long ago, an old version of yourself you keep forcing in order to still fit. We keep such things as keeping a shirt that is too tight, not because it's still beautiful, but because we're not ready to try on a new one. In a Jungian therapy session, I met Lena, a woman in her 30s who had stayed in an 8-year relationship, even though the two had almost no shared rhythm left. She said, "I know he no longer belongs to my path, but if I let go, I'm afraid I'll feel empty." Through therapy, she gradually realized that this fear did not come from love, but from the unexamined darkness, the darkness of change. Lena realized she wasn't holding on to him, but holding on to the version of herself from 8 years ago. When she let go, not to abandon someone, but to return to the right timing of her soul, her life expanded in a strangely gentle way. What mattered was not that man, but the emptiness she had feared, the space needed for a new chapter to begin, like the image of an autumn forest. When yellow leaves fall, many think it is a sign of decay, but in truth, it is the tree releasing what no longer serves it. The leaves must fall for the sap to return to the roots. Humans are the same. What we let go of never disappears. It becomes subtle nourishment for a new version quietly emerging within us. What you need to remove here is not only expired relationships, jobs, or habits. What you need to release is the instinct to cling to the old out of fear of emptiness. Jung said the ego always seeks certainty, while the soul seeks transformation. This difference is what makes us hesitate, cling, and delay. But when you accept that emptiness is also part of the process, you no longer panic when you find yourself standing at a crossroads. One day you will understand that holding on does not keep the past alive, it only suffocates the present. And letting go is not loss. It is an invitation to live wider, deeper, and more truthfully with the current calling your name. Let something old leave you, quietly, without noise, without regret. Because what awaits you ahead is not emptiness, but the version of yourself you have postponed for far too long. 4. Removing the habit of forcing yourself to be strong, because it kills the positive shadow. Carl Jung once warned that most human pain comes not from what they feel, but from what they force themselves to swallow. Because every time you suppress, you push the energy of the shadow, the primal dark side, into a box too small. And when it is compressed just a little more, it is no longer protective strength, but turns into self-destruction. Many people think strength means not crying, not getting angry, not trembling. But according to Jung, the shadow holds the rawest life energy within you. The instinct to protect yourself, the need to feel protected, healthy anger, and the drive to rise above. When you suppress it, you don't become more mature. You simply make it find another way out, sometimes through an explosion, sometimes through depression, sometimes through a terrifying sense of emptiness. I once worked with a woman in her 30s, whom her colleagues saw as the pillar of the company. Everyone came to her for help. Everyone believed she was strong, rational, and resilient. She never complained, never lost her temper, never burdened anyone. But one day, in a therapy session, she broke down sobbing, not because something big had happened, but because she said, "I'm tired of always having to be strong." She realized that for many years, she hadn't allowed herself to be angry, hadn't allowed herself to be weak, hadn't allowed herself to ask for help. And this very strength had pushed her into chronic stomach pain, insomnia, and emotional exhaustion. When the shadow is locked away for too long, the body becomes the place that stores the pressure. And she understood that what she needed was not to be stronger, but to allow herself to be more honest. Modern psychology shows that when you suppress emotions, the amygdala, the emotional processing center of the brain, becomes more active, pushing the nervous system into a state of hypervigilance, causing stress, insomnia, and reduced immunity. This means that every time you force yourself to appear fine, your body endures another round of biological stress. Emotions that are not released harm not only the soul, but also the nervous system itself. Jung believed that the shadow is not an enemy, but a source of strength you have not yet learned to use. When you allow yourself to not be okay, when you dare to say I'm sad, when you admit I'm angry, when you confess I need help, you are opening the door for the shadow to step into the light and integrate with consciousness. And once it is seen, that raw energy becomes courage, resilience, and powerful intuition rather than self-destruction. Therefore, what you need to remove is not emotion, but the habit of forcing yourself to look fine. Let yourself soften a little, speak when you are in pain, ask for help when you are tired, sigh when you need to, touch your anger to understand the message it brings. And then you will see, when you stop forcing yourself to be strong, you finally become truly strong. Because that strength comes from the harmony between light and dark, between reason and instinct, between consciousness and the shadow that had long been forgotten. 5. Removing relationships that shrink your being. So what happens when you stop forcing yourself to be strong, yet still feel your life doesn't expand? This is when you see a deeper barrier, the things you know are old, but you still haven't let go of. There is a subtle but merciless truth. Some relationships do not destroy you with storms, but with quiet shrinking. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances," meaning every person you touch activates some part of you. Some make you shine, expand, and glow, but others make you shrink, hesitate, and doubt yourself. One of the clearest signs of a misaligned relationship is that your body speaks before your mind. You lose sleep after seemingly normal conversations. You no longer want to share your truest thoughts. You feel yourself sitting next to them, but as if you have shrunk to half your size. This is not a fleeting feeling, but your soul signaling that a part of your being is being compressed. Because when two people's energies do not harmonize, the soul naturally coils inward into a defensive state, just like the body contracts when walking past a cold, lifeless place. A viewer of the channel once shared that she always felt not good enough whenever she stood next to the man she loved. He never insulted or hurt her in any obvious way. On the contrary, he was very logical, stable, and orderly. But that very orderliness made her constantly suppress her emotions so as not to become a burden. When she was happy, he said she was exaggerating. When she was sad, he said she was too sensitive. When she wanted to share her thoughts, he often responded with a sigh. Gradually, she stopped expressing her creativity, stopped showing her passion, stopped talking about the dreams that once made her proud. One day, she burst into tears and said, "I no longer recognize myself when I'm with him. I've become a shadow." Jung called this the contraction of the self, when the soul must compress itself to be accepted instead of expanding freely. And like a shirt that is too tight, even if still beautiful, it still makes you breathless and unable to move naturally. And the strange thing is, when you leave such relationships, you do not lose someone, you regain yourself. Creative energy returns, your breath grows lighter, your face relaxes, not because you became stronger, but because you are no longer being compressed. Jung believed that a true relationship is not a place where you try to become acceptable, but where your soul expands. If being beside someone makes your being contract, that is not love. That is the beginning of abandoning yourself. So quietly remove the relationships that force you to shrink. No drama, no accusations, just return to the space where your soul can expand without asking anyone's permission. Because in the end, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the freedom to be you, whole, clear, and free. And if these lines make you realize that some part of you has been shrinking for too long, give the video a like. A small action, but sometimes those small actions mark the moment you choose to step toward the larger life meant for you. 6. removing the limiting beliefs you mistake for my personality. When you remove the relationships that shrink your being, you face the most subtle blocker of all, the limiting beliefs you mistake for. This is just who I am. According to Jung, within each of exists another person, a version hidden in the unconscious, silently shaping our emotions, choices, and limitations. But the sad truth is that most of the limits we live under are not truth, but residue from old experiences programmed into the unconscious as complexes. Many people call social anxiety "I'm naturally shy," call procrastination "that's just my temperament," call insecurity "I'm just someone insignificant," but these are not your nature, they are programming. Complexes are like old lines of code running silently in the mind, looping again and again, making you react in ways your consciousness cannot control. You weren't born shy, you simply learned to shrink because you were once shamed. You weren't born a procrastinator, you were simply criticized enough times to believe your efforts didn't matter. You weren't born insecure, you were simply compared so much that your unconscious concluded you would never be enough. These are not you, but you under programming. I remember the story of Lady Gaga, who was once branded with countless cruel labels: weird, too rebellious, not pretty enough to be a star. In school, she was mocked until she believed her voice and personality were problems. At one point, Gaga nearly believed that her differences were a flaw, a wrong personality that needed fixing. But as she later shared, the moment she stopped trying to become an acceptable version and began standing with the bold artist inside her, her career truly opened. Her success didn't come from changing herself, but from removing the limiting beliefs others had imposed on her like a mask. Some limiting beliefs are like dust covering a mirror. You look in and see a blurry, distorted version of yourself and believe that is me. But dust is not the mirror, just as fear is not your nature. When you begin wiping away each layer of dust, the true reflection starts appearing, clearer, brighter, bit by bit. Many people spend their whole lives thinking they are the shadow, only because they've never seen the mirror clean. Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." Every limit you encounter is not a barrier, but an old version returning to be freed. And when you dare to ask, "Is this truly my nature?" the limiting belief begins to dissolve. The beautiful thing is, when the false layers fall away, the true self begins to reveal itself, stronger, wider, and utterly free. Remember, your true nature has never been weak. It has simply been covered by old stories. Once you return those stories to the past, the person you were always meant to become will begin to step forward, clear, luminous, and fearless. 7. Remove the self-critical voice in your head, because it is not you. But once you have removed the limiting beliefs you thought were your nature, a deeper layer will appear, a layer Jung called the introject. The voice is internalized from parents, teachers, society, and the people who once made you feel small. And the most frightening thing about those voices is this: they sound like you. They echo in your mind like an obvious truth. You're not good enough. You're going to mess this up again. Everyone is better than you. But the truth is, those lines are not your soul speaking. They are the memories of old wounds given a voice. Carl Jung once said that most human suffering does not come from the present, but from old recordings replaying at the bottom of the unconscious. When you believe the self-critical voice is the voice of reason, you hand over control of your life to the people who once hurt you, even if they no longer appear in your world. This is why many adults, competent, kind-hearted, capable, still feel not enough. They are not defeated by reality, they are defeated by memories that have turned into internal whispers of sabotage. The self-critical voice is like a parrot trapped in an old cage someone placed inside your mind long ago. It cannot speak love, it only repeats the scoldings it once heard. And the saddest thing is, even when that cage is rusty, Even when the person who taught it to speak left your life long ago, you still allow it to stand there, repeating words that no longer belong to you. I once met a young woman who worked as a graphic designer, talented to the point that anyone who saw her work was stunned. But every time she prepared to apply for a new job, she withdrew. She said, "There's always a voice in my head saying, 'You're not capable,' even though nobody has said that to me in the last 10 years. In therapy, she realized that voice was not hers. It was the voice of her strict father who once dismissed her art as useless doodling. When she learned to separate herself from that voice, her life changed quietly but powerfully. No more blaming herself for no reason, no more lost confidence in areas where she excelled. She said, "I realized I was never fighting myself. I just never learned to protect myself from the old voice." Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And to become what you choose, you must silently remove an enemy. Even the strongest people must learn to confront the self-critical voice. When you learn to turn off that loudspeaker, you will discover a gentle but profound truth. You were never weak, you just never heard yourself clearly. And that is one of the 10 things you must eliminate in silence if you want to change your life in the way Jung spoke of. And what about you? If these lines touch you, leave one single word in the comments: clear. Not for me to see you, but for you to see yourself, that you are beginning to step out of the old voice, entering the light of your real self. Number 8. Remove energy fragmentation, because energy is the foundation of the self. And just when you think you have regained control of your life, you will confront a harder truth. You are not collapsing because you are weak, but because your energy is being drained by things unworthy of it. Carl Jung once said, "Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict." But when your energy is torn into 100 pieces, inner conflict becomes inevitable. You do not lose control because you lack strength, but because the stream of energy that should be flowing in one direction is leaking into countless small channels, each pulled by a different form of distraction. Social media, comparison, drama, noisy environments, empty conversations, or even the obsession with keeping up with everything happening out there. Number 7. Humans don't collapse because they lack time. They collapse because they spend their energy on things that do not belong to their souls. Only when you reclaim each drop of that energy will you hear the true call from within. I once met a man in a therapeutic meditation class. He said he no longer felt motivated, that his mind was always covered by a thin fog, vague and heavy. Every day he listened to podcasts, watched videos, replied to group chats, scrolled endlessly, not because he enjoyed it, but because he feared that staying still would make him fall behind. During therapy, when he was asked to turn off all devices for 24 hours, he described the first hours as a kind of withdrawal, restless, disoriented, as if his mind didn't know what to lean on. But after just 1 week of reducing stimulation, the change was so clear that the whole class went silent when he said, "I realized I didn't need more inspiration, I just needed quiet." In the Dhammapada, there is an image of a person holding a lamp in the wind. Just one anxious thought, one noise, one rumor is enough to make the flame flicker. But when the person learns to shield it, to draw their hands back, to stand still, the lamp suddenly shines clearly. The human mind is the same. The flame never goes out. It is only shaken by things that should never touch it. To see the path, you don't need a brighter light. You just need less wind. When you remove energy fragmentation, you don't become idle, you become focused. Focus is not effort. It is a return to psychological wholeness, and when energy is gathered in the right direction, intuition, which Jung considered the voice of the self, begins to activate. You clearly sense what is right for you, what is draining you, what must be released, what must be kept. You no longer need to ask anyone or prove anything. You simply listen to the inner current. A strange thing happens when you reclaim your energy. The external world begins to reorder itself. You no longer get pulled into drama, no longer overreact, no longer feel directionless. The things that once exhausted you become distant noise. Quietly remove these distractions. No need for declarations, no need for anyone to know. Just reclaim a little bit of leaking energy each day, and you will find yourself becoming sharp, calm, and powerful in ways that cannot be explained, only felt. 9. Remove the fear of others' eyes, because it is only the persona trembling. And when you have learned to reclaim your energy, act with will, and stop living according to external noise, you will encounter the most delicate barrier, the fear of others' eyes. A tiny fear, yet capable of controlling your entire life. You can be strong, disciplined, hard-working, but just one judgmental glance can make your persona tighten instantly, as if you must shrink yourself to fit the image the world wants. Carl Jung once said that the persona, the social mask, is something we create to be accepted, but its cost is this. Every time you worry about what others think, you hand your soul into their hands. You live through their eyes, not through your truth. 10. A friend of mine named Anna is a freelance painter with a very distinct style. Bold colors, wild strokes, untamed and vibrant energy. But over time, her paintings became safer, more like sellable things. When I asked why, she whispered, "I'm afraid people will say I'm weird." She said that whenever she posted a bold artwork online, just one negative comment was enough for her to delete the entire thing. "I don't know which one is me anymore," she said. "I'm just painting what no one will criticize." And at that moment, what she lost was not her artistic color, but the color of her soul. The fear of being seen is really the fear of being cast out from the tribe, a primal reflex wired into the brain since our ancestors' time. In neuroscience, the amygdala, the fear center, lights up intensely when you feel observed or judged. But the strange thing is, the amygdala does not distinguish between real danger and imagined fear. It reacts the same, meaning sometimes you tremble not because there is danger, but because you think someone is looking. But once you realize this, you regain power. I always remember the image of a paper lantern in strong wind. From afar, it looks as if the lantern is about to fly away, but when you get close, you see the string is firm, and the candle inside is steady, unshaken. Humans are the same. The persona gets blown by the wind of judgment, but the true part inside you, the self, remains still. It doesn't need acceptance. It only needs to live honestly. And when you recognize that the fear of others' eyes comes only from the trembling mask, you suddenly feel half your weight lifted. And perhaps the quietest lesson here is this: the gaze of others is never as powerful as your own gaze. Jung once wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Meaning, no one can decide how you must live because they do not walk your path. When you stop judging yourself, the world loses the power to judge you. Remember, no one has the right to decide who you are, except you. And if there is one thing you must eliminate in silence to change your life, it is this fear of being seen, because your life is not written by other people's eyes, but by your soul. If you truly want to overcome this fear, try writing one word below describing the version you want to become, without any explanation. Let's see how many people are bravely stepping away from their persona in silence. Remove the need to control everything, because control is a product of the ego, not the self. Right when you stop depending on others, stop seeking understanding, stop waiting for validation, you will encounter an even more subtle blocker, the need to control. The ego will change strategies and tell you, "Fine, if we cannot rely on anyone, then we will control everything." It makes you tighten like a violin string, always trying to predict, maneuver, anticipate, hold every situation as if letting go would make your life collapse. Carl Jung once reminded, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And this applies to your inner strength as well. The self does not measure your worth by what you try to control in your mind, but by how you act in trust. When you live from the self, you no longer run your life through tension or preemptive planning, but through harmony between intuition, wisdom, and the ability to trust a flow larger than yourself. A woman who ran her own business once shared that she had not taken a single day off in 4 years, not because she loved her work that much, but because she believed, if I relax even for a moment, everything will fall apart. She controlled revenue, controlled customer feedback, controlled even the emotions of those around her, but the more she tightened, the more her life shrank into a coil of wire. Then her mother was hospitalized, forcing her to stop working for a week. At first, she said she felt like she had been thrown off a speeding train, but when she came back, everything was fine, her team functioned, and nothing collapsed as she had feared. And that was when she realized the most painful truth. For many years, she hadn't been managing her business. Fear had been managing her. Control, in its deepest sense, always comes from the fear of uncertainty. The ego believes that if it doesn't interfere, doesn't script everything, doesn't pre-plan every danger, life will betray it. But the self operates differently. It knows that life has its own order, and that synchronicity, the flow Jung spoke of, only appears when you leave enough space for life to arrange itself. In Greek mythology, there is a story of Artemis, the goddess of the wild and of intuition. Artemis never controlled her forest. She didn't command the winds, didn't force life to move according to her will. She simply listened, observed, and moved with the rhythm of nature. Her strength did not come from control, but from union with the flow. This is also the energy of the self. No striving, no forcing, yet full of gravity. When you let go of the need to control, you begin to see what was once hidden: signals, intuition, synchronicities appearing exactly when needed. You become more sensitive without becoming more tense, stronger without tightening. The most important thing is this: letting go is not abandoning responsibility. Letting go is stopping the fight against the current that is trying to carry you somewhere greater. Letting go is allowing life to do its part. And perhaps the quietest lesson you need to release is the illusion that you must control everything to be safe. Because every time you let go of one layer of control, life opens another door. And this opening, gentle, subtle, effortless, is how the self leads you toward your fuller self. When you look back at the 10 things you must silently remove from your life, you will see something very clear. Change does not begin in noise, but in deeply private moments. The moments when you decide not to carry another burden, not to repeat an old wound, not to continue a role that no longer fits. Jung always believed that the path back to the true self is not a battle, but a process of unburdening, layer by layer of expectation, layer by layer of fear, layer by layer of noise that no longer belongs to you. And when you release these layers, you do not become a stronger version, you become the true one. The version who knows when to be silent, when to let go, when to stand with herself, even when no one else stands beside her. If the words in this video touch you, share it, because someone out there may be carrying the same weight, but not yet know how to name it. And don't forget to subscribe so you can continue walking with us. Each video is not just a lesson, but a doorway, leading you closer to the self Jung always believed you were born to become. Your new life begins in this quiet moment, when you choose to let go so you can step into yourself.